Hey everyone, welcome back to Room 237, and as you can tell by the background, yes, it is finally here. I apologize for the delay. I'm still in the middle of a move, so things are still hectic. I saw this movie Sunday. It's now Thursday night, so it's been a while. Even after posting numerous times that the review is coming, don't worry, still getting hounded by people. When's it coming? Is it coming? Well, here it is. But I also wanted to wait a few days because I didn't just want to leave the theater, be on that high, and be all excited and just praise it because of that. I wanted to actually ruminate on my thoughts. I mean, I'm still going to be praising the hell out of it. I love this movie, but I wanted to think about it for a little bit. And so, yes, Matt Reeves' The Batman 2022. I feel like I should give some disclaimers. Despite what I'm going to say in this video, it does not discredit anything from the previous Batman films. I still think Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy are wonderful, fantastic, masterfully made films. They're still cinematic achievements, whether you're fans of them or not. They are. The Burton Keaton films, still very fun. More of the fantasy element of the comics, whereas Nolan's was more cinematic and realistic. Schumacher, for better or worse, they're nostalgic. Was never the biggest fan of Snyder. Snyder can make a film look like a comic book. I think he's the furthest away from being like the comics, other than just taking panels and putting them on the screen. This, though, this is the Batman film. I can't speak for everyone that I know I've been waiting for forever. This is the Batman film I've always wanted to see. I don't even know where to begin. For this review, I'm not going to be getting too much into the plot because it does have a 3-hour runtime, which I do know is one of the criticisms people have with it. And I already have so much to say about it. I'm not going to go through the entire plot, but I'll go through the gist of it. Now, first off, Batman, world's greatest detective. I love detective stories. I love murder mysteries. We never had one. At least, we haven't had a film, live action, that really showed how much of a detective Batman is. Here, we do. This is a detective film. This is a street-level murder mystery, kind of like Seven, which I think is what they were going for. It has a dark, gritty, bleak tone like Seven, and I love Seven. So that was awesome. We've never really had a really good interpretation of the Riddler. I mean, the last Riddler on screen was Jim Carrey, who was a very Adam Westy Riddler. I really like the one in Gotham, but this is a very different take on Riddler. And I will say, pretty much every character in this film, this is the best representation of all of these characters that we've ever had on film. Now, by default, I will always say the animated series is the greatest iteration and the closest to the comics. But as far as live action and film goes, this is the closest. I mean, this is the Batman comics put to film. And so, yeah, even though all these characters are very, very much like their comic book counterparts, the Riddler is really kind of like the Heath Ledger's Joker, where this is Matt Reeves and Paul Dano, who plays him. This is their creation. We've seen some Riddler stuff like this before in the comics, where he's like this Jigsaw type serial killer. you know, these elaborate traps than with a riddle. But uh, even then, it's still very different than what we see in the film. So I would say that's probably the closest to being a more original idea, but it's still very much Riddler-esque and works great. I mean, and Paul Dano's performance is fantastic. I would say as far as Batman villains go, he's up there with Heath Ledger's Joker. I mean, he's... I'll get to him when I get to performances, but say character-wise, everyone is exactly how they are in the comics. Now, as far as the stories, first off, no live-action film we've had has been a straight-up adaptation of any comic book. And I should have taken these out before, but this film in particular, one of which is packed up right now, but now we've seen Year One, we've seen Long Halloween, kind of been taken in the Dark Knight trilogy, but this one also takes Darwin Cook's Ego, which I have reviewed Ego in both of these books. And I'm sure people will find other connections to other stories, but it's been on record that these three stories in particular are the ones that inspired this film. I think there's even like a box set that you can buy of all three as like a promotional thing for this film. And all three stories are represented wonderfully. It even opens up on Halloween, and it takes place, I think, over the course of a week. And it has this great noir feel that really helps capture the sort of journal entry, noir voiceover narrative that, really fits the tone. Just, this review is going to be a little bit scattered because I'm going to be praising every aspect. I don't quite know where to begin, but honestly, I would have to compare it to the last two Planet of the Apes films, because directed and written by Matt Reeves, among other people. This was co-written with Reeves and Peter Craig. And just what Matt Reeves was able to do with Planet of the Apes, I was hoping when he was announced, it's like, please let him do Planet of the Apes with Batman. And he did. Especially with, because his Apes films are more, those are the ones with the emotional depth, the character development, and story. It has its action, but it's just what it needs. It's definitely not popcorn action. It's just what it needs to be. It's not spectacle. It's not big, grandiose thrill ride CGI-ness like a Snyder film. And that was the case with this movie. It mostly is just this dark, bleak murder mystery, but it has its fights, its Batmobile chases, its explosions, but very strategically placed, and it's not a distraction. Doesn't overstay its welcome, and it's very well shot. Which is one thing I will say is one of many things I will say it has over the Dark Knight trilogy, is that even though Dark Knight did have actual martial arts fighting in the choreography, the way it was shot wasn't really that great. And here, which we even see in the trailer, when we see Pattinson beating up a thug, that camera just holds on him, and we see and we feel every punch that that Batman gives. So that was really nice as well. And God, where do I start with this? One thing that I will also say is a huge thing that could have been kind of a death knell to this film was the anticipation and the hype. I mean, there have been announcements and stills and trailers for like 2 years. Of course, it was supposed to be released in June of 2021. We had Corona. It got pushed to October. Things still sucked. Then it got pushed to now, to March. And in all that time, I mean, the trailers and everything just looked so awesome that in that period, people could have either lost interest, just built it up so much in their heads that nothing would add up. But to me, even from that first DC Fandom trailer, where I think only 30% of the film was shot, go back to my trailer reaction, I was blown away. I was like, wow, this is gearing up to be the best Batman movie ever. And it was. I was not let down at all. And just the performances, the tone, the stories they went with, and how they're represented, and Matt Reeves' direction, just perfection. Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, which again, I apologize. But, so, first, I guess go through the cast. Robert Pattinson. I will admit, I was part of the Pattinson hate when it was first announced. I hated the idea of, oh, Twilight sparkling Batman. But then I saw movies like The Lighthouse, and I thought, okay, this guy can actually act. And he's, over and ashamed. I don't know if he's ashamed, but he's done with Twilight. He's ready to move on. And I really respect him for that. So I was willing to give him a shot, saw the trailer, knew he could handle it. Now, I've heard people say he's too skinny. Well, you must really be a big Ben Affleck fan. And the only time Batman has really been a hulking being is in a Frank Miller story. I mean, he's really not unbelievably huge in this. But I go back to another Frank Miller story, Year One, where he's not exactly the biggest guy. He actually looks like a normal person in a Batman suit. And when you do see Pattinson with his shirt off, you can tell he bulked up a little bit. So we don't need to have a huge hulking Batman every time. And also, there's going to be people that will just look for reasons to hate on a film that's going to be liked. Like, I'm sure people said they hated the bat suit, which everything about this movie that they promised, they totally delivered on. For the suit, they said they wanted it to look like an early, homemade kind of suit. The example they gave was like one drawn by Lee Bermejo. That's exactly what it looks like. It's got like the Lee Bermejo stitchings and the kind of armor versus cloth. Just it looks like a Bermejo suit. Maybe with a touch of Arkham, especially with the bat symbol, which, yeah, having a symbol he can take off and use as a tool or a weapon is awesome. I think this was the first movie to really do that. Oh, his chin sticks out too much, or his ears are too long or too short, it's too round like a helmet. It's like in Year One, it's his first suit. I think it's not supposed to be perfection yet. I love the look of the Batmobile. Even though I think the Tumbler is cool in Dark Knight, ever since Batman Begins and Up, and especially through the Snyder films, it looks more like a futuristic tank. I've been more of a fan of the Batmobile that looks like a car, maybe a little more futuristic. This looks like a muscle car that's just been souped the hell up and worked on and fixed up. I love the Batmobile in this. And also, I like how this is the first movie to really address the black eye shadow. And I'm sure there'll be people that say it looks stupid, but it doesn't really draw attention to it. We just see him in the Batcave after a night out with his cowl off and his hair's all messy and he's all sweaty and it's all smeared. I thought he looked cool. And it does add a little bit more realism to it, but I thought that was interesting. And what really made me think this movie is in the bag and just already what I've been waiting for is the first time we see Batman. I mean, it opens up with Riddler killing his first victim, but when we're introduced to Batman, I mean, we do have the journal entry voiceover narration, which is October 31st, Halloween. I'm sure people will compare it to Rorschach, but that literally is the voice of the comics. The narrative style of many of these comics is kind of like a journal entry. But talking about how the signal is new in this, because it is year 2. We don't see the death of the Waynes, thank God, which shows that this is made by someone who loves, understands, and respects the source material, and is making it for people that are fans of, love, and respect the source material as well. Because, it's not spoon-feeding us everything. It's not showing us their version of the death of the Waynes and the pearls and the falling in the Batcave, because we don't need that every time there's a new director and a new actor in a new line of films. I'm tired of seeing it. I'm glad we didn't get it. But the first time we see Batman, talking about how the signal is new, which Gordon, Lieutenant Gordon, he's the only one on board with Batman. I mean, he's a wanted vigilante. He has just enough pull to kind of be given the chance to work with Batman, but his ass is on the line, which really kind of goes with the alliance in these films. Spoiler alert, no Harvey Dent. He's not mentioned or anything on this. I don't know if he's going to be in the future 2 films, but I guess we'll see. But yeah, first time we see him, he's talking about how the signal is new. And it's not just a signal for him to know he's needed. It's a signal to show the criminal underworld that he's out there and he's watching. And we get this little montage of all these street thugs committing various crimes. Fighting innocent people, stealing from them, whatever. And every time we see a criminal do something, looks up in the sky, happens to see it, and then looks into this darkened, pitch black alleyway or like little cranny in the building, and the camera just like stares at it and then shows the point of view from that darkness looking at the criminal and showing Batman could be anywhere. He could be lurking in the shadows anywhere, and just the fear that it instills in all the criminals throughout Gotham. Because all the criminals it shows us in this montage are all over the place. And anytime there's a shadow, he could be in there watching. I loved that. I was like, this is one of the reasons why I love Batman. He's a superhero that instills fear. That's one of his big things. And, I've always loved that aspect. One of the reasons why he's my favorite superhero. And they've never really gone to that level. I mean, Dark Knight has had some scenes where it shows criminals kind of fearing the idea that he's out there, but not to this level. This, I thought, just really helped set the tone for the whole film. And it's right in the beginning, and I loved it. So Pattinson worked. He doesn't do a voice. He doesn't do like a Bale voice or anything. he might speak a little softer, or I guess it's closer to Batman Begins, if anything, but he really doesn't do a voice. And yeah, there are scenes like where he's screaming, like during the interrogation scene, which I will say again is up there with the interrogation scene with the Joker in Dark Knight. I'll say I think there's even some parts of it are better than that scene in Dark Knight, but where he's pounding the glass and screaming and like, "What have you done?" To Riddler. Even when he's screaming, still intimidating. He doesn't sound silly or anything. But so yeah, Pattinson, awesome. His Bruce Wayne, they didn't really do a whole lot with Bruce Wayne, I will say that. They did go more of the year one or Earth 1 or 0 year kind of route, where either he's not the playboy philanthropist, he's actually a reclusive. He's dedicated his entire life to this crime fighting idea. Like, he hasn't done anything with Wayne Enterprises or keeping up with his parents' legacy at all. Makes no appearances. And I do think at some point he will kind of do that. Like, he will kind of put on the public Bruce Wayne. And I think that's part of the ego inspiration of what's the real identity and what's the mask, Bruce or Batman. It does toy with that a bit. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of Bruce Wayne, at least not the public Bruce Wayne. So hopefully in future films we'll kind of see him stretch his acting legs in that direction. He's pretty much in dark Batman mode the whole time. But, for a 3-hour movie, our first film with a new director, new actor, and a new line of films, yeah, give us all the Batman that we can handle. So Pattinson, I will say, he's my new favorite Batman. He is the closest to the comics. Next, we have Andy Serkis as Alfred, and again, perfect casting. Andy Serkis is a treasure. Mostly known for his motion capture roles, but even when he's out of the motion capture, he does great. Especially like in The Prestige, which is a Nolan film. Loved him as Caesar in Reeves's 2 Planet of the Apes films, and he's Alfred in this, and he's one of my favorite Alfreds. I mean, he is the helpful butler. He does, he is very intelligent, and it shows he does have a past with circus and or theater, and he kind of helps out with the riddles as well. But also, it's hinted at that he's had some former special forces in some way, and that he helped Bruce train. Gotta keep hitting this thing. Still getting over something. And there's some great scenes between Alfred and Bruce that really pull on your heartstrings. I will say, I choked up and teared up at least 2 or 3 times during this film, because I was so happy and amazed at just how much they got right. So really liked Andy Serkis. Jeffrey Wright as Lieutenant Gordon. Perfect case of how, if you do change races of a character, doesn't matter as long as it's good. Now, if you have 80 years worth of a character being a certain way, I would say there's no need to change it, but they did for this, and I thought Jeffrey Wright was very solid. He really acted like this seasoned just beaten down by all the horrors that he's seen in Gotham. And his chemistry with Robert Pattinson, I thought was great. Especially the scene, there's even a scene where, later on, where he has to help stage an escape. He has to help Batman break out of the precinct because he's captured and wanted. Because Gordon's higher-ups have had enough of him. And Gordon has to literally take a punch so that Batman can escape. And, I love their chemistry. And but also kind of, it didn't remind me of Morgan Freeman in Seven, but more of just like this, what's the word I'm looking for? Seasoned, but, just kind of world-weary version of that. So I really liked him. Colin Farrell as Penguin. Now, like Riddler, we have not had a legit Penguin on film. Now, I know people are going to hear that and be very upset with me, but Danny DeVito's Penguin is very much a Tim Burton version or invention. He is nothing like that in the comics. The only thing really that's the same in Batman Returns is his name is Oswald Cobblepot, and he runs for mayor. That's basically it. And I even saw one comment on a Batman Facebook page where someone said, all I want is Penguin to just be completely darkly psychotic and totally fucked up. I'm like, how? Like, what are you expecting? Him to be like, just completely crazy in the sewer and eating rats and being gross. I'm like, you mean like Danny DeVito? He's like, yeah, but more like this tone. And I'm like, well, you're never going to see that outside Tim Burton. And anyone else that wants to see more Danny DeVito Penguin, you're never going to see it again. You're never going to see it outside Tim Burton because that's not Penguin. That is Tim Burton's gothic Quasimodo version. Colin Farrell, which sometimes it was distracting because his makeup and his voice and accent did look like an older, overweight Robert De Niro, which I thought was awesome. But this was a perfect Penguin. I thought it was great. He's not quite the Kingpin yet. He's still an underling of Falcone, which that's another thing. Yeah, the Nolan trilogy, since they did these stories as well, there's Falcone and Maroni, but it's setting up how Penguin could eventually become like a Kingpin, and I thought Colin Farrell did great. It was so great to see this character done well on the big screen. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, but when he is there, he is very fun to watch. Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, again, the best Catwoman that we've ever had. Some people were complaining about her looks when she was first announced. She is literally straight out of this book. I mean, looks like her, short hair like her, perfect suit, perfect Catwoman suit. The sort of, I don't know what to say, acrobatics, but how she, the cartwheels and jumps and how flexible she is. Fantastic. Especially the scenes where we see her like jump off buildings or down fire escapes. She's not a prostitute in this. They do keep the more... She's actually a bartender at the Iceberg Lounge. Which, I mean, just hearing the name Iceberg Lounge and seeing it in a film really made me feel like it's a comic on the screen. Yeah, I thought that was excellent. Yeah, she's like a bartender, and she does have a friend, like in this, that she tries to protect. But, and this isn't really a spoiler, but her friend gets killed. The person responsible is getting involved with, or is a subject in a Riddler's crimes. So that's how her and Batman cross paths and start working together. And I've heard someone say that their chemistry and romance felt forced. Not to me. I thought their chemistry was just fine. He said that her seduction of him felt forced as well, and Catwoman is a seductress. She is. And, you know, at first, and I think it played on how they can sense that they're kind of kindred spirits who, you know, their inner turmoil and everything is manifested through a costume version of some animal, cat and bat. And I just seeing those two on screen with how Pattinson looked and how Kravitz looked, it was year one on film, and I thought she was perfect. Her performance was great as well. Also, but I will say, because Batman, Riddler, and Catwoman all kind of had their own piece of music that would change throughout the film, like tempo and just the style of music. Batman's was Something in the Way by Nirvana. Riddler's was Ave Maria. And Catwoman's, it sounded like some of Michelle Pfeiffer's music from Batman Returns. I don't know if it was the same or if that was an inspiration on the final piece, but I still thought it worked. And then John Turturro as Falcone. I love John Turturro anyway, but especially scenes where he's with Colin Farrell and just John Turturro, like when he had his sunglasses on and when he kind of does like this big smile and chuckle, while Farrell looks and sounds like an overweight Robert De Niro, Turturro looks and sounds like a skinny Al Pacino, and I thought it was fantastic. I liked him as Falcone. There's plenty of Easter eggs throughout this film as well. Like, this movie does touch on the relationship between Selina and Falcone, and eventually where that leads. I'm not going to give it away because the movie does treat it like a twist or a spoiler. But it does have the moment where she claws his face. And when that happened, I just about burst out of myself. I thought that was incredible. Anything that had to do with Long Halloween, I thought was fantastic. Which, apparently in the sequels, they want to use Calendar Man. So maybe they will go with the... I'm not a Calendar Man fan, but maybe they'll go with like the Hannibal Lecter type version from this. That would be pretty incredible. And then you have other people like Peter Sarsgaard makes an appearance as someone, and I thought he did great. He's a good character actor. And Paul Dano as Riddler. Now, throughout most of his scenes, not only is he obscured by this combat mask and this combat jacket to kind of give him a Zodiac killer kind of look, which I know is what they were going for anyway. And Paul Dano even wrapped his head in saran wrap to kind of show how smart he is to not leave any kind of evidence. But I guess behind the scenes, just his no heat could escape his head, and he almost passed out. He was advised to stop, but he kept saying, no, I want this, I want to do it. Paul Dano is one of the best character actors out there. I mean, at age 23, not only was he in There Will Be Blood, which I think is the best, the greatest and best made, and my favorite film of the 21st century, not only was he in that at 23 years old, but he shares the screen and carries his own alongside Daniel Day-Lewis. He's a super intense actor. Now, throughout most of the film, he does have like that Zodiac getup, but which does, help create this mystery as to who he is. But also, like when they're talking about him on the news, there'll be like a live stream of him, or there'll be some sort of video that we're seeing, which just creates this other barrier of us not being able to get to him, which helps create this mystique. And he goes from very I think he has some sort of voice changer in his mask, but he goes from this very deep, slow talking, almost Pinhead, Doug Bradley type voice, to just doing this barking and howling, just yelling. That is very, you can tell he's very unhinged. But his whole role is that he's going after the top of Gotham's elite. The head of the DA and other people like him, to expose the corruption of Gotham. He's essentially on the same warpath that Batman is in, just in a very different way. And it does kind of take, eventually, when his overall plan really starts to unfold, we do see it's kind of going in a similar direction that 2019's Joker did. But it didn't feel preachy, didn't feel overly political or like social commentary. I thought it worked. Especially when Riddler goes into why he's that way. I thought it made sense. And, his riddles are, some of his victims are kind of Jigsaw related. One guy does have like a shot collar around his neck, but he always leaves riddles behind for Batman. And his clues are very cryptic. Like, at one point, there's one clue that they have to find. Well, first they have to, the clue where the answer is like a car, then there's a riddle as to where the car is, and then they're looking through it and they find, the victim's thumb, which they couldn't find anywhere, because the thumb, and attached to the thumb was a thumb drive with all these videos and pictures. And, it's very clever. I love stuff like that. And his Riddler code is also very Zodiac inspired. So that was very interesting. But then when we see Paul Dano unmasked and playing Edward Nashton, which he does go by Nashton in this, not Edward Nygma, which I know he did go by Edward Nashton before at some point in the comics, which is fine. I've always preferred Edward Nygma, but it's not enough to complain about, really. But that interrogation scene where he kind of has this thing where he gets like these very stiff lips, like he's shocked, and you can just tell he's just barely holding on. But that interrogation scene was just, there's even a part where at the end of that scene where he thinks Batman has figured out what his final plan is, but he finds out Batman missed a clue, so he still doesn't know what the final piece of the puzzle is. And when Batman is asking, what have you done, as he's beating on the glass, which is great when he does that, Paul Dano just starts singing Ave Maria, which is kind of a cliche when they try to show how crazy someone is, and it could have come off as very silly, but I thought it was very creepy, helped make him look as deranged as he is, but all while sort of maintaining how he's proud that he's still the smartest man around because no one still hasn't figured it out. So Paul Dano is great. And again, and yeah, Riddler is one of the hardest characters to write for because you have to be able to write riddles and write for a character who is supposed to be the smartest person. So if you're not a criminal mastermind or a complete genius, it's kind of hard to write a very interesting version of Riddler that works. In all the comics I've read, there's really only been two really effective, great versions of Riddler. That's Jeff Johns and Scott Snyder. But here I think they did a good job. And since Riddler isn't really in the stories that they decided to take inspiration from, they could kind of do what they wanted with him. And while everyone else is very much like their comic book counterpart, Riddler is very much a original creation for this film, at least the way he's done. And I thought he worked just fine. He's still very much like Riddler. He's still very much doing Riddler things, but the way they went about it certainly fit the tone of the film, which is very dark, is very bleak, and making him this Zodiac serial killer that loves puzzles. It did help the Seven sort of tone that they were going for. So that's the cast. The music was done by Michael Giacchino. The score was wonderful. And, it didn't have a whole lot of action, but it had what it needed. Again, like the Planet of the Apes films. You had the scene from the trailer where he beats the hell out of the guy and says, "I'm vengeance," which is the first time he's on screen. I almost leapt out of my seat and cheered during that moment, even though I knew it was coming because of the trailer. But, so all the fight scenes, the camera is still enough to see what's going on. Which, there are a couple fight scenes in the Iceberg Lounge. So, like, when there's, like, strobe lights and music and everything, you can still tell what's going on. Whereas, the scene in Dark Knight, where Batman's going after Eric Roberts, you really can't tell what's going on when he's fighting guys in the nightclub. And also, the fights, people will still praise the warehouse scene in Batman v Superman and saying it's like an Arkham fight on screen. Some of the fights and what he does in this blows that away, at least for me, especially at the end where Gotham is being flooded, and I can't really talk about it without getting into spoilers, so I guess I'll put spoilers here. But, and again, I apologize for not really going into the plot, but I don't really think I have to with like a Batman film. You kind of know, like, okay, he's gonna fight some thugs, then Riddler comes in, tries to figure out and stop Riddler while his crimes are going on, and then eventually, his endgame is really gonna frig things up for Gotham, but the Batman's going to resolve it, and then they're gonna hint towards other villains and other characters for the future. In that sense, it is pretty formulaic, but I will say it is definitely way more focused than even the best film before it, which was The Dark Knight. And I know Dark Knight had a lot of different plots going on, and it kept changing and having so many different things going on to kind of help go with the insanity and chaos of Joker. But it can be a little overwhelming at times. And here, for a 3-hour film that is literally from start to finish solving this Riddler mystery, it is very focused. And it never gets boring. It never drags. But, okay, I'll say, there are people he's fighting. I won't get into spoilers, but there are people that Batman is fighting during the flood. And it's some sort of stadium. And there's like this thing up above, like the rafters, where there's people with rifles that Batman has to stop. And this is like the Arkham games, where he uses his grappling hook, and it kicks them off so they fall, but they're strung up so they can't go anywhere. And like he'll shoot him with something like his grappling hook or whatever, and then he'll jump off and take them with him so that they'll be strung up. But he's done it in such a way so that he doesn't just fall, he also goes up. So it's like he goes down and pulls them, but then when they fall, they pull him up so that he's back where he was. But it's very, fluid. And then you, excuse me. Then you get the Batmobile chase where he's chasing after Penguin, where it's just awesome. Especially the moment in the trailer where after Penguin flips over a bunch of times, the Batmobile just comes out of the flames from the explosions. And then we just see Batman walk towards him. I went like this because the camera's down at his feet and it's very, very intimidating. Because Penguin is upside down, strapped in, so that's probably what he sees. This also has probably the best and coolest grappling hook scenes and flying through the city. Because that part where he has to escape from Gotham PD precinct, he makes it to, I guess, like a courtyard in the precinct, and he just uses his grappling hook and goes all the way up. The way that camera just kind of like follows him up was great. And then he runs outside, he's in like a tower, and you can tell he's like afraid. This is the first major leap or jump that he's had to do. So he's got like this flying squirrel kind of suit. And then when he just jumps, it goes into like this GoPro view, like camera's like right in front of his face. I'm sure some people will say it looks stupid. I thought it was cool. I mean, it's like you're right there with Batman during the first time he's flying through Gotham. I thought it was super cool. And God, there's just so much to say about this film. I could probably go on forever, but yeah, this is the best. This is the best Batman movie. This is the closest to the comics. I will say, even for stories that have been done before, I would say is done better. Like even parts of Long Halloween that was used in Dark Knight, compared to this, that was more like, okay, we're gonna take a few panels and we're just gonna kind of put them in there as like references. This felt more like Long Halloween, put into film. Every single character is the best film version of that character. Even Riddler, who is really an original idea for how he's done. Best that we've had on screen. I love the tone. The tone is very bleak and dark and has this great 7 vibe to it. Also, another reason why Batman is one of my favorite, or one of, is my favorite superhero, is that he's the world's greatest detective. And we do kind of see him learning how to be a detective in this. Like, he's already super smart and capable, but we see him becoming the detective that he will be. And we haven't had a detective movie yet. I mean, maybe Dark Knight has the most of him doing some sort of forensic crime solving stuff. But here, like, he's at the crime scene. He's, finding clues. He's solving riddles. He's walking around the crime scene with all the police, with Gordon. Love it. It's, even though this movie is grand in scope, I'm glad we finally just have this street level, just murder mystery detective film. Yeah, it's still a $200 million budget film, and you can see and feel the budget on screen. But, it wasn't. I really did not want another Batman movie that was this big CGI roller coaster ride that Snyder was doing, like with Doomsday or Darkseid and Parademons, and just having this big, loud, crazy movie. Just a quiet, somber, street level detective movie. Best thing that they could have done right there was just go that angle. Just going for that alone makes that a contender for being the best. Then of course everything else that goes along with that and how the execution of it is my favorite Batman movie. Robert Pattinson is my favorite Batman now, and everyone else. Andy Serkis is my favorite Penguin, and Colin Farrell, Penguin Alfred. Colin Farrell is my favorite Penguin, and so on and so forth. Zoe Kravitz is my favorite Catwoman. I actually felt their romance. I did feel their attraction for each other. Whoever that was wanted to say it felt forced in this film, but not Dark Knight Rises, where Catwoman betrays Batman, 3 to 5 times, and he's still in love with her. Here it felt more natural. Oh, one thing I didn't mention was this movie also did not go gadget crazy. I mean, he has his Batmobile, he has his grappling hook, he has his bat symbol on his chest. But he doesn't have a lot of crazy gadgets that are kind of unbelievable. He does have the contacts that can record, like contacts with camera in it. That did remind me a little bit of some stuff Scott Snyder did, like in his Court of Owls arc. But, which was really cool to see. And there's a lot of Easter eggs like that too. Also, my good friend Stefan loved the fact that it was the Shakespeare bust. There was a Shakespeare bust Easter egg. Probably the biggest, it's not really an Easter egg, it's a hint. And I don't even know if I should say it, because I know when people hear it and they haven't seen it yet, I'm going to say spoilers here. So if you haven't seen it yet, go see it. It's absolutely worth it in theaters. So, and regardless of what your favorite Batman movie is, don't be afraid to love this film, because I know how the fan base is. I know there'll be people that will see this and probably have an existential crisis because they like it more than Zack Snyder. Or they will try to look for, and the more frivolous reason of their complaints, like, oh, the Penguin didn't wear a top hat. This movie's garbage. Anything like that, they're looking for reasons to hate it. But I honestly do think that this is finally the Batman movie that will penetrate the fan base and everyone will finally be able to agree on it. Just because, it is so much like the comics. It is literally a comic book movie. Not just because all the characters in it and the world they're in is done so well, it's so perfectly, but the stories that they did take were done right. Again, I almost cried 3 times sitting in the theater. So yes, definitely worth seeing in theaters. It's a masterpiece. I mean, if you like what Reeves did with Planet of the Apes, he surpassed that with what he did for Batman. So yeah, spoilers now. Probably the biggest hint, or if they don't use them, it'll be an Easter egg, which, actually, let me fix this light real quick. It's starting to bother me. Well, that didn't really do anything. Now, Riddler is in Arkham. His plan did not work. And this reminded me of the animated series when Batman survived the bomb by hiding in the safe, but Riddler doesn't know how he survived. So he's just in Arkham and he's screaming and he's just trying to figure it out. Because his endgame was, once he revealed, the corruption of everyone, he created this little community on whatever website and through live streaming to have all the people that were ignored, friendless, forgotten, unseen, to go out, get the same kind of combat gear, rifles, and he set up 7 vans down by the bay so that when they exploded, it would cause enough destruction that it would allow the city to flood. And when it would flood and everyone would gather at this certain area, his minions that he accrued would just start killing people, especially the newly elected mayor, which she's really the only one other than Alfred that is trying to get Bruce Wayne to not be a recluse and to help, keep his parents' legacy alive by donating to charity and doing more philanthropy work, which I think he will do. I think he will become more the playboy public Bruce Wayne in future films. But obviously it didn't work, and that's, Batman stops all of them. Which, there is this great scene where Batman is, knocked out. And Catwoman is helping him, but he's, knocked out. So one of Riddler's guys goes to attack her, and out of his utility belt, he takes a shot of adrenaline. And it just makes him unleash on this guy, to the point where he's kind of like when Edward Norton was beating up Jared Leto in Fight Club, just not stopping. And then it's like when he is stopped by, I think it was Gordon, you kind of see the look of I've gone too far. Just great scene. So when Riddler realizes his plan did not work, he's in his cell, he's sobbing, he's crying, and he hears a voice from this other cell trying to cheer him up. And be like, hey, you'll be better next time, don't worry about it. And then Riddler asks who he is. His answer is a riddle, where the answer is a friend. And then he lets out a laugh. A very insane cackly laugh that is very recognizable. I don't know who it was, because when we do see him, it's like up close and obscured by darkness. You could kind of make out a smile and how his hair looks, which is a very Arkham game kind of look. But yeah, they're hinting towards Joker. And apparently, with all the sequels and everything they have planned, which is 2 film sequels, and then for HBO Max, the GCPD series was canceled. I guess there's talks of a Penguin series and an Arkham series. Now, I don't know. I imagine if they go the Arkham route, which is more like a horror show depicting Arkham as a haunted house, I'm sure that's where Joker would come through. Because in their films, Pattinson and Reeves had mentioned Court of Owls, Calendar Man, Freeze, and Hush as villains that they like to explore, but no Joker. And to be honest, I'm okay with that. Even though I do believe every version of Batman should have his Joker, but Joker's just already been done so many times, and just do villains that either haven't been done already or haven't been done for, in a serious way. In a way, the serious comic book way. Because, I mean, technically, Riddler and Jim Carrey's Riddler wasn't far off. That's what he was like in the Silver Age. But, I would love to see Court of Owls. If they exposed, or Riddler exposed all the corruption with the DA and a judge and that kind of elite, take it to the next level in the second movie and do Court of Owls, where it goes even beyond that. That would be incredible. Also, Riddler reveals that he was an orphan, and it does kind of go into the territory that Joker was doing. I mean, along with him recruiting a bunch of potential school shooters. But, Riddler was an orphan, and he talks about what life in an orphanage was like, where 30 kids to a room, sloppy food, you wake up to rats chewing on your fingers. Some babies would die because of the cold. There's deplorable conditions. But no one gives a shit about me, about that orphan. Everyone gives a shit about the one orphan, Bruce Wayne, who gets to sit in a lion's den bedroom mansion. Everyone's worried about how sad he is and how he's gonna make it through life, even though he already has everything. And that causes some conflict with Batman as well. But, I thought that, and just the way Paul Dano explains it just makes his performance excellent. But again, that's more of that character development that they can go into in the second film. Also, I think that helps go in with the ego story about kind of, I do have it all, but I'm this tortured soul anyway, just because my parents were killed. But again, just done so well. Also, another thing that was when Selina does claw Falcone's face, like in these stories, but it also toys with the idea. I don't remember if it was confirmed in the comics, but it's confirmed in this film, that Falcone is Selina Kyle's father. I liked that. And again, there's just so much. I could go on forever about this movie, but this, if you haven't got it already, this is my favorite Batman film. I think this is the best Batman movie ever made. It not just in just quality of film, what they were able to accomplish, and just how good of a movie it is, but also just in how close it is to the comics, how much they got right, and how right they got it. Character, depth, development, characterization, motivations, the world that they're in, and everything about it, just perfect. Literally a comic book turned into a film. I loved it so much, and real. If this is the creative team throughout the whole trilogy, I am all for it. And Reeves. I'm just gonna start pausing and stumbling now because I don't really know how to end this. I don't know if I should end it. But yeah, greatest Batman film. I went into it thinking it was going to be good and thinking it was going to be great. I trusted the trailer. I trusted Reeves. I trusted Pattinson. And I was not let down. I was not let down at all. I loved this movie. Again. And, I mean, if this isn't your favorite Batman movie, that's fine. 2 each their own. But I think it is safe to say that objectively, whether you think so or not, stacked next to previous films, this is the most comic accurate one. I mean, I don't think that's opinion based. I think that's something that either it is or it isn't. But yeah, Matt Reeves's The Batman 2022. It's the Batman movie I've always wanted. It's a great, we get to see Batman as a detective. It's in early years without being an origin. Wonderful tone. It's a perfect mixture of, gritty comic book movie, but also cinematic and realistic, like the Nolan films. Just a wonderful movie. It's excellent. I can't praise it enough. I really can't think of one. I can't even think of one nitpick. Honestly, I would give this movie 100% if I was doing it for Rotten Tomatoes. But yeah, loved this movie. That light's about to die, and I think my phone is too. So yeah, the best Batman movie. My new favorite Batman movie. Pattinson is my favorite Batman now. I loved it. Anyway, you finally got your Batman review. It's finally up. I hope the anticipation wasn't as bad as it was for the whole film. But anyway, thank you for watching.